Hello and welcome to CinemaBurger. I'm Scott Burke and I bring you movie reviews from a different perspective. Today we continue our Fast and the Furious series with Fast and Furious. A lot of people are probably thinking, but wait, wasn't Tokyo Drift the next movie to come out? While that is true, Tokyo Drift was a spin-off movie. It was directed by Justin Lin. It took place in Tokyo and it decided to not have any of the main characters in it and focus on all new characters. Now, it did very poorly in the box office. It was the lowest grossing movie at the time. And then a few years later, they brought back the original crew with Dominic Toretto, Brian O'Connor, Letty, and Mia for Fast and Furious. Now, if you know anything about Tokyo Drift, you'd be surprised to see Han back in the movie. Now, it turns out that Fast and the Furious takes place before Tokyo Drift, so for now we're just going to put that one aside. Now, Fast and Furious takes place 5 years after the original Fast and the Furious. Dom and Letty are in the Dominican Republic while Mia is still in LA. Brian has become part of the FBI now and he's back on the side of law. Now, on this Blu-ray, there is a second short film in the Fast and the Furious series. It's called Los Bandoleros. It was directed by Vin Diesel and it shows the group getting ready to prepare for the opening scene. They're living in a small town and the town says they need gas, so Dom brings in Han and Tego and Don to help steal the gas tanker trucks. Now, we will get into that scene in just a minute. Now, actor Sung Kang, who plays Han, also starred in Justin Lin's first movie he directed called Better Luck Tomorrow, where he plays the same character. So technically that movie can be said that it's part of the Fast and the Furious universe. Now, first let's address the tagline on the movie itself. It says new model original parts, which means the movie may be different, but it has all the original actors back in the movie. Now, the opening scene of the movie is, for the first time, not a street race. It is the theft of the tanker trucks. They're on a mountain highway. A truck has 5 tanker trailers. So you see a familiar Charger drive into the scene with Dom driving, and you see 2 flatbed trucks chasing after the tanker truck. One of them is being driven by Han, which is a surprise, but we all know that this movie takes place before Tokyo Drift. Now, the flatbed truck spins around, and someone on the outside pushes the hook down to latch onto the tanker trucks. Now, Letty has a liquid nitrogen gun, and she sprays the connection to the tanker trailers, and then hits it off with a hammer, severing the connection. Now, they slow down, and some of the tankers are acquired. Then, 2 new characters named Tego and Don, they only speak Spanish in the movie. They are known for demolition. Now, they come in with their flatbed truck and they spin around. They connect to the tanker. Now, at this point, the driver sees the Charger and the flatbed trying to steal the gas, so he swerves a bit to try to let go of the flatbed. As Letty is spraying the coupling with liquid nitrogen, she drops her hammer, and she's hanging off the side of the trailer, and Don and Tego are stuck to the back of the truck. Now, Dom drives up to distract the driver and tells Letty to still spray the tanker, and he spins around, knocking the tanker loose. So the driver still has 2 tankers attached, and they're coming to a hill on a mountain. And already this scene is definitely amped up from previous scenes we've seen. The action is revved up a lot. Now, the stuff going on is somewhat still believable with precision driving. You can attach to a tanker truck and liquid nitrogen to break metal is pretty clever. But spinning around to knock off the other tanker is a little far-fetched, I guess, but we'll believe it for now. So the driver realizes he loses control, jumps out of the truck, and they realize that the hill is there. So Letty jumps on to the Charger. So the truck and the two tankers fall over, and now Dom is stuck between the edge of the mountain and the tanker truck that is now spinning over, caught on fire, and hurtling toward them. He's waiting for the moment while Letty says, "Come on, Dom, let's go." And it's getting intense. The spinning truck is coming closer, and he drives right under it at the right moment, narrowly escaping and watching the rest of the truck go over a cliff in flames. Now, this is, let's say, 90% believable, with all the precision driving and executing of moves. It's, I guess, believable, but it's definitely anything bigger than we've seen up until now in any of the Fast and the Furious movies. This includes Tokyo Drift, even though it takes place later, but the stunts are still believable. Now, after the tanker truck heist, Dom, Letty, and Han are back in their hideout, and Dom is worried about being a target, so he leaves before Letty wakes up. Now, when Dom says goodbye to Han, he talks about what's next for Han, and he said, "Oh, they're doing some crazy things in Tokyo," alluding that he will eventually be in Tokyo. So we cut to California, and Brian O'Connor is pursuing a perpetrator, and he's trying to get a lead on a drug dealer named Arturo Braga. Brian is still not fully trusted back on the FBI after what he did 8 years ago in the first Fast and the Furious. Now, in real time, it's been 8 years since we've seen Brian O'Connor and Paul Walker in the Fast and the Furious movie. Now, Mia calls Dom to his dismay because he doesn't want anyone to find Dom because he's still on the run, so he's a target. Now, Mia calls telling Dom that Letty died. Cut to a funeral where Mia is there, Brian is in the distance, and even further in the distance, Dominic Toretto is there. So now he's back in the country, and this will cause the conflict. Now, Mia takes Dom to the site where she crashed because of the car crash, and he uses car science in his brain to, based on the skid marks on the ground, the nitro meth, which is what the boost that car was using that killed Letty, used. So using his mind, Dom recreates a scene of how she died. It seems she spun out and then someone shot her car. Now he is trying to find that person, and it all leads to Arturo Braga and Brian looking for them. So Brian and Dom cross paths looking for this person. They find a lead named David Park, while Dom also goes to old garages trying to figure out who runs the streets and everything. Now, Fast and Furious is a pivotal movie because it reestablishes the relationships between Brian and Dom and Mia and Letty from the first movies, since they haven't seen each other in so long. So they need to get familiar with each other, they butt heads a lot, they fight each other, and everything in between. So just like in Too Fast, Too Furious, the street racing scenes are used as a means to an end to try to get closer to the drug dealers. So Arturo Braga has a second in command named Campos, and he says he's going to test the drivers to see if they're good enough to drive for Braga, since they drive across the border for drugs and back. So now, this time, the street racing scenes are a little amped up in the fact that they don't close the streets, so there's traffic and everything. So that's definitely upping the ante from the previous movies when the street races are on closed streets. They give each driver a GPS, and near the end of the race, Brian thinks he's going to win because Dom boosts too early, but as Brian gets closer, Dom hits his car, causing Brian to spin out, and Brian thinks it's BS that he lost because he would have won. Now, this is still establishing the previous rivalry back to the first movie where Brian thought he almost beat Dom in a race. Now, when Brian and Dom come back later, they go back to the Toretto house where Mia is, and this also brings back the love relationship between Brian and Mia, and they're having dinner and everything seems fine until Dom discovers that Letty was an informant for Brian and the FBI trying to clear Dom's name, and that's why she got killed. This causes a fight between Brian and Dom until Brian reveals that Letty did it for Dom, basically. Now, throughout the movie, the FBI are trying to get Arturo Braga, but when they find out that Dominic Toretto is back in the United States, they also want Dom. But Brian is trying to use Dom to get to Braga and doesn't want to arrest him. Now, other people working for Braga's crew are someone named Giselle, played by Gal Gadot, and Phoenix, played by Lance Alonso. It turns out that Phoenix was the one who ran Letty off the road and killed her. Now, throughout the movie, when Brian and Dominic are working together, Brian is still kind of disobeying the law because he is friends with Dom and cares about him. He still ends up disobeying the cops and stuff. The way that Braga smuggles drugs across the border, they have an underground tunnel in a cave in a mountain, and the scenes kind of remind us of the pod racing scene in Star Wars: The Phantom Menace. There's a lot of twists and turns, and at the speeds they're driving, it's kind of hard to believe that they didn't crash more than they did. In the ending chase scene, people crash, but that's because they're trying to weave in and out and kill people. Now, to go back to Mexico and stop Braga, since he goes back there after a failed FBI mission, Dom brings his father's Charger that he's been working on since the first movie. Now, in the final tunnel chase scene, Dom ends up having to jump out of his car into another car, and it gets destroyed. That kind of simulates the end of the movies as we know them, I think, in terms of street racing and things like that. Now, at the end, Brian and Dom bring in Arturo Braga, who turns out to be Ramon Campos. That was the hint, because you never see Braga in person until the end. Now, they kill Phoenix, who was responsible for Letty's death, so that story gets ended. And Dominic agrees to stop running, finally, and atone for his crimes in the past. Now, he still gets maximum prison sentence, even though he helped bring in Braga, but the judge says one right doesn't cancel out wrongs. So as Dom is on a prison bus to a maximum security prison, the scene cuts far away and you see a couple of cars drive up. You see a Charger driven this time by Brian. You see a Honda Civic driven by Mia. This is the first time that Mia has actually driven a car for a heist or a chase scene. And it's a Honda Civic, which alludes to the first movie, since they use Honda Civics to steal the DVD players. Now also, Tego and Don show up again to break Dom out of the bus. Now, it's interesting that Brian is driving a Dodge Charger, since he really only likes import cars, but him driving what would be Dom's car simulates that he is taking lead of heists and taking lead in the head of the family. And then the movie ends. Now, Fast and Furious has great direction from Justin Lin. The movie looks beautiful. He did just as well as in Tokyo Drift. The stakes were definitely upped a lot in this movie. We reestablished previous relationships that are still there, just brought back to light. Now, Fast and Furious at the time was the highest grossing movie of the franchise. It reinvigorated the franchise as well. And I really give this movie, I would say, 4 out of 5 burgers, I think, because everything is amped up but still somewhat believable. The cinematography is amazing. Justin Lin really reinvigorated this series because he will go on to direct 2 more movies, which we'll talk about in the next video. So, next time we will talk about Fast 5, which really changes the storylines of the movies and changes the plot structure. So I've been Scott Berger, and I'll see you next time.